Chapter 29. Analogy. An analogy is a comparison between two things that are quite different in nature. It looks at complex subjects and simplifies them through comparison. The simplified or more familiar aspect of an analogy helps a reader understand the more complex concept. The analogy is used to explain some concepts, and the points of comparison are limited and contextual. It may be as short as a sentence or as long as a few paragraphs. Analogy example. Here is a familiar example of an analogy, which also happens to be an English idiom. The grass is always greener on the other side. This expression compares a difficult situation or a trying time in one's life to a field of grass. This analogy explains that life always seems better when looking at it through someone else's lens. It is difficult to explain trying times in life. This expression simplifies the matter to one that is easier to grasp and understand. Analogy versus simile and metaphor. Even though an analogy is a comparison, it is neither a simile nor a metaphor. What does simile mean? A simile compares two entities with comparison words such as like, as, and resembles. He stood as solid as a rock. What does metaphor mean? A metaphor compares two things without using comparison words. He was a rock. An analogy and a metaphor both compare things that are different and look for similarities between the two. However, an analogy focuses on the similarities between the two entities or situations in order to make a topic more digestible. A metaphor is a figure of speech that says one thing is another. Modern examples of analogy. A common expression that is an example of analogy is to let a situation thaw. This analogy compares any difficult situation to a block of ice. To let any situation thaw would mean to let it rest, to give it space. Ice and a difficult situation are not similar by nature. However, an analogy compares the two to show the similarities. Ice is a much simpler subject to explain than a trying situation. For example, if a worker is frustrated with his manager, a co-worker might tell him to let the situation thaw. This analogy is a way to compare a complex subject to a simpler idea. The intention is to give the situation space to let it rest and melt before making any serious decisions. This analogy takes a complex topic like a heated relationship between two individuals and makes it more familiar by comparing it to ice. The purpose of analogy. Analogies are useful in that they help explain complex subjects. Writers who are communicating a difficult or perhaps even sensitive topic might benefit from using analogy. For example, a writer may introduce his work with an analogy to prepare his audience for the difficulty of his subject matter. Examples of analogy in literature. Author Rachel Carson, in her landmark text Evaluating the Effects of Man on Nature, prepares the audience by beginning her writing with an analogy. In Silent Spring, Carson portrays a town which was once rich and flourishing. Then, as man invades the town, nature becomes silent because man destroys it. Carson begins with this fable in order to prepare her audience for her complex essay regarding man's detrimental impact on the natural world. Types of analogies. Part 2 Whole. Battery, flashlight, hard drive, computer. Cause and effect. Fatigue, yawning, itching, scratching. Person to situation. Mother, home, teacher, school. Synonym. Obese, fat. slender, thin. Antonym, poverty, wealth. Sickness, health. Measurement, pound, kilogram, quart, liter. Time, March, spring, December, winter. Some examples of sentence analogies. 1. Carpenter is to hammer as painter is to brush. 2. Core is to earth as nucleus is to atom. 3. Photosynthesis is to plants as digestion is to humans. 4. Mechanism is to apprentice as doctor is to intern. The following illustrations will be found useful. 1. Cup, coffee, bowl, soup. 2. Tiger, India, beer, Russia. 3. Architect, building, sculpture, statue. 4. Eye, myopia, teeth, pyrrhia. 5. Conference, chairperson, newspaper, editor. 6. Safe, secure, protect, guard. 7. Microphone, loud, microscope, magnify. 8. Melt, liquid, freeze, solid. 9. College, student, hospital, patient. 10. Flow, river, stagnate,